Okay, good day all. Welcome to the show. Today I'm with my co-hosts Lauren and Carl, alongside myself, Sean. We've got an Arsenal legend in here today, in the building, or should I say over the camera. Uh, he's made 447 appearances for Arsenal, scoring 37 goals. He hails from Dulwich in southeast London. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It's none other than Mr. Paul Davis. How you doing, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, Sean. Good afternoon.
Good
Good to see you
afternoon.
again.
And how's lockdown treating you?
Yeah, we're doing okay. I think, like everybody else, we're just getting by from day to day. Making sure that we stick to the regulations,
Yeah,
and so getting the work done,
yeah.
and yeah, just keeping ourselves healthy. So yeah, touch wood, everybody's doing okay at the moment.
Good man. Well, we'll get straight into it. And a lot of people, they see a football player and they often say, you've either got it or you haven't got it. I had the pleasure of being one of your students at St. George's Park. I remember somebody played a football into me and it's missed me. And you've got your notepad in your hand with your glasses and you've just killed the ball, you're fine. And I thought, you know what, he's got it. So I just thought to myself, you know what is the it factor for you and what separates you from the rest in progressing in football, do you think?
I don't know. I think, for me, my story is, I would have thought pretty much the same as a lot of guys, but that I speak to.
Yeah,
I started off um, like most guys playing from when I was 8, 9 years of age
yeah,
in South London, as you've mentioned, and just getting a love for the game just by playing. From the age, I can remember from the age of 8 or 9, just going down and just kicking around. We lived in South London, and we lived in council estate,
yeah,
and essentially there was some grass areas that we could go and play on, but it was mainly sort of concrete sort of cages, I would say. So we did have an area that we could go down and play as young kids, and it was relatively safe. I didn't feel as though there was any danger going down. So for me, it was just a natural thing
yeah,
to go down and kick around with a football on my own on the estate. Obviously, I had friends on the estate, and perhaps they would play for a little while, but then go off and do other things.
yeah,
But always, for me, just straight away loved the ball. I don't know where that came from, because I didn't have any siblings. So I suppose my sister was younger, but she wasn't interested.
yeah,
My mother wasn't interested in football. My mother brought us up on her own, so it was those times you just did what I just did what I enjoyed, and had lots of great fun just kicking around on my own. Um, we had like a little sort of concrete area with some poles, not poles, like pillars in between. I used to dribble the ball in and out of
okay.
that on my own. So it was a natural start, I think, for me.
So was it mainly focused on like dribbling or doing little skills, or did you practice anything specific that developed that skill that took you further?
I think what happened, obviously, you I used to watch Match of the Day, like I suppose most people still do now. And it's
Yeah,
been going for, I don't know, 50 odd years, Match of the Day,
yeah,
maybe even longer. But you'd watch Match of the Day, which was the only program on football back then, that one program. And it was on for probably 45 minutes on a Saturday evening.
yeah,
And you'll see the professionals play and see what they were trying to do in a professional arena with thousands of people watching them.
yeah,
And I suppose I took a lot of inspiration from that. So I'd watch that on a Saturday evening, and first thing on Sunday morning, I'd be down. Oh, I have to say, after Sunday school, because I had to
okay,
go to Sunday school because my mum made sure we did that, and I wasn't particularly keen on going to Sunday school, but once
You're
I'd
not the
done the
only
Sunday
one.
school bit, I had the ball and I was trying these tricks that I'd seen on Match of the Day the evening before. So yeah, I think that was probably my first inspiration into trying things that I saw professional players do. And then I found out that one of the Fulham professional players, a guy called Les Strong,
Yeah.
he used to play for Fulham many years ago as a professional, and he lived in the same area.
Okay.
Because where we live is like there's a mixture of council flats, but then a couple of roads along there'd be like really nice houses, so it's like really sort of cosmopolitan area.
Okay.
And apparently this footballer lived in the area. He's like, wow, that's the closest I'd ever got to feeling like there's a footballer close by. I never met him, but I knew that he lived in the area. So that was a bit inspirational to know that somebody had achieved something that I was trying to get to. But yeah, I suppose my first sort of experience after that was the World Cup, 1970, watching Brazil.
Yeah.
That was the first time that was televised. The old World Cup was televised, and you saw most of the games.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me.
So who was your favorite Brazil player at the time?
Well, Pele was the one. Pele was the one that everyone spoke about, and he would have been around about, I don't know, 22, 23. So he was, Pele was
unbelievable.
People knew he was the world's best player at that time.
Yeah.
And of course, he was a black player as well, and that kind of made me identify with him more. And it was inspirational to have somebody like him as the world's number one player for me. You didn't get a chance to see him play like you do now. You get the chance to see Messi play almost every day.
Yeah.
Really saw people like that play when the tournaments came along. So, every 4 years, really, it's the only chance you got to see these players on TV.
We speak about it quite often, and that feeling where you knew these big stars were coming on, and you'd run home from school just to see the World Cup. Was that something you went through as well?
Absolutely, yeah. These tournaments just came around every 4 years. It was the World Cup, I remember just waiting. So after the 1970 World Cup finished, we knew we weren't going to see these guys going into the 74 World Cup.
Yeah.
Like, wow, kids now or people watching now can't really think of it like that. But that's how it was. So you really treasured those times that you were able to watch these tournaments. I don't even think we had like recorders back then, so we couldn't even record what we'd just seen. We just had to memorize it.
Okay.
And then kind of keep it in our heads, and then perhaps go out and try and replicate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it was like for me growing up. And I went to school, obviously, just up the road from where we lived.
Yeah.
The junior school, and the age of 8 or 9, the sports teacher saw something in me as a footballer, and made me captain of the school football team at age 8 or 9, and then that kind of gave me a bit more confidence and inspiration to go on and do other things. So that was the start of it. Yeah.
Okay. Good to hear.
So, Paul, it's interesting to kind of hear you reflect there on your experience growing up in South East London and playing on the courts, because I'm from South East London myself, and that's exactly what I was doing this morning. Although I did have YouTube to look back at, so a little bit different, I guess. But just reflecting on like South East London as an area, there's been lots of players grow up there and go on to succeed at Arsenal. Obviously, the likes of yourself, Rocastle, Ian Wright, and now we're seeing Emile Smith-Rowe come through. What do you think it is about South East London that develops these players and then draws them north of the river to go and play at Arsenal?
Yeah, so I grew up more sort of Stockwell side, which is more South London. So yeah, South East is more down by Peckham and King's Cross. Elephant and Castle. So it's a little. We're in the same area in South London, but it's so yeah, those guys that I came through. So I was like one of the first to come through from South London that went to Arsenal, and then after me it was Dave Rocastle, Michael Thomas,
Yeah.
And Kevin Campbell.
Yeah.
Came from the same sort of South London area. What it is, I suppose, I think, our environments has a lot to do with all our experiences, and I think South London is an area where there's a lot of people living in a small sort of space, and people from different walks of life, different cultures. I think it's the same now as it was back then. There's lots of cultures, different mixtures coming in. I think you have to fight for what you're going to get. There's always going to be competition. There's always somebody wanting to do what you're doing. So I think there's an edge. There's always a bit of an edge to somebody from South London. There's always a competition. There's always people around giving you competition. At least that's how I found it. There's always somebody to compete against, and it was close. I always felt it was a close competition physically and psychologically. And I think that's probably why there's been such a big surge of players from that part of the country. I think that would be the main thing, and I think there's inspiration as well. So, when I came through, I don't think there was anybody that I can remember coming from South London apart from Les Strong, who I mentioned earlier on, who was from Fulham, who played for Fulham but came from South London. But then I came through, and then speaking to Michael Thomas, he was inspired by me coming through and knew that I came from South London. So and then Dave Rocastle came through and he saw that I came. So there's like a knock-on effect. So people link in because he's done it. He's from South London. I think there's a little bit of that as well. But I would think, mainly it's to do with that kind of environment that we grow up in. We're so close to everybody being competitive and wanting to get ahead.
Definitely. Looking at that element of competition, what do you think it was that set you apart and led to you being picked up by Arsenal?
Yeah, for me it was just a internal desire to be a professional footballer from a very early age, and really having the strength of character to pursue it and believe that it can be done. I practiced whenever I could. I just worked as hard as I could to get better and to do all the things that I felt was going to get me to being a professional. I think it's that internal drive, and there's lots of stuff that happens along the way to all of us, and it's how you react to stuff and how you bounce back off of things that happen. I think those are the key things that I look back on, and I feel that got me through. It's about being able to bounce back from being told that you're not good enough, or you've got a situation whereby you might feel that you're not good enough, but still being able to persevere. But I think for me, perhaps, you know, I was different because I feel that I did have something, because that school teacher that I spoke about when I was 9, he saw something in me to say, you know, made me captain of the school team, and he planted the idea that, you know, why don't you, I don't remember if he specifically said, you know, think about being a professional footballer, but, you know, he gave me that kind of feeling that I could be if I wanted. So, yeah, I think it's that there's an inner drive in people that do go on to be successful. There's a stroke of luck, there's luck involved, but I think there's a perseverance in the person that makes them continue and try and persevere to get to where they want to get to, even with all the sort of disappointments. Because that's the thing, I think, is disappointments, both with yourself and from others. So it'd be situations. So like you might, you know, I might play a game. I might be playing a game at 9 and feel that I've played really, really badly. Might not come off the pitch feeling that I'm not up to the standard. But then having that sort of, you know, ability to then say, look, okay, that's happened. I'm going to go again tomorrow. I'm going to improve on myself. So I think it's a self-taught thing. It's a for me, it was just being able to believe that I could do better every time. And even if people are saying bad things or you're not getting picked for a team, so there was situations where I didn't get picked for maybe the district team. So, and a good example actually was when I was about 13. I wasn't actually picked up by a club because most of the good players at that time were actually picked up by clubs, and I hadn't been picked up. So I started, you know, you start thinking, well, why, you know, I need to be at a club now. Everybody else who's supposedly any good is at a club, and I'm not. And how you got in at those days were, you know, scouts would go around and watch you play or watch the teams play, and I wasn't getting scouted, so it was, you know, how do I get noticed? And luckily for me, I was noticed at 13, just 13 and a half by a scout, Arsenal scout. I was playing for South London Schoolboys, my district team, and so yeah, that's how I was actually scouted. But you know, I had to keep going, keep believing that I was going to get scouted, and not give up and not lose faith.
Good.
Would you have any advice for like younger players today who are maybe in that position where they're not getting the opportunities and they're not getting maybe the attention they feel they deserve, or getting picked up despite putting a lot of effort in?
Yeah, that's you know, I'm sure a lot of players will be watching this and be in that situation, particularly now, you know, with where we are in terms of right now in this pandemic, which makes it very difficult for everybody. But in normal situations, and hopefully we'll be out of this pretty soon, and then, you know, people can get back playing and people can get back to being scouted in a more normal way. But my advice is to believe. You believe in what, you know, believe in yourself. Enjoy what you're doing. Just do it to improve yourself. I would say it's a self. I think it's a self battle, really. It's having that conversation with yourself all the time about how you're going to improve, and what can you do to get to the next level, and be ready for disappointments because they will come along. It's I think those are the key things for me, for anybody in any profession really, that to get along you need to you need to be able to come back from those disappointments. So for my disappointment was not getting picked up. I need to just keep going, keep believing that would happen, keep working, keep telling myself that, you know, I just need to keep working, keep believing in myself. And that's hard. It's not easy to do, but it's you know, if it was easy, then everybody would make it through. And the percentage of players that make it through is very small, ultimately. But you're not thinking that at the time, are you? Is it? I don't think I can't remember thinking that to myself. Well, I didn't even know the figures, so it wasn't. You know, I just felt, and I suppose, you know, I had people, the school teacher particularly, that it sort of encouraged me.
And it's really great to hear you reflect on the experience of that teacher, because I think a lot of people have them role models in their life. Before I hand over to Carl, who I know is very keen to ask you about your Arsenal debut against Spurs, just looking at that idea of progressing to the next level, in many ways you were kind of a pioneer for those really talented individuals of the 80s. So again, the Rocastles, Tony Adams, Paul Merton, progressing from the apprentice scheme into the first team. You know, what's that experience like for you, stepping up to senior football, and why do you think there was such success at Arsenal at the time?
Yeah, Arsenal had a really good youth setup at the time, and I came into it when I was, like I say, 13. So I used to, back then it was like, so we're talking sort of early 80s, well, no, mid 70s, 75, 76. So I would run on, I was like sort of 13, come home from school, get my homework done, and then get changed, and then go over to Arsenal. So from where we lived in South London, to get over to Arsenal, you had to jump on the tube, Victoria line, Piccadilly line, and we used to train up by the stadium, or in the stadium. There was a little area in the stadium that we trained. So I made that journey on my own at 13, and I often look back and think, you know, back then that's quite normal to do that. If you wanted to get somewhere, you'd do it on your own back. So my mum was working, so she couldn't, and she didn't drive, so she couldn't get me there. I had to get myself there. So I think that's a big thing as well. I don't know how many 13-year-olds now would be able to do that, be allowed to do that, make that journey on their own. But I think that kind of developed me as a person, as somebody that, you know, if you want something, you go and do it, you go and get it done. I'm not waiting on my mum, I'm not waiting on somebody to pick me up. It's kind of like, that's me, I've got to go and do that. So I think those kind of things do teach you a lot about yourself, how much you want something, how much you're prepared to do to get it. And I think that is a big thing, that discipline to dedication to do something. I think I had that. And always I say to my two boys, that they're young men now, but, you know, I did a paper round when I was around about the same age, 10, 11. Around about 10, 11, did a paper round. And maybe some people listening don't know what paper round is. I don't know. If I could describe what a paper round is, it's like when you go, it's a little job that we used to do, or if you were lucky and you got a job with it. So there's a corner shop that sells papers, and it sells it's like a corner shop. And basically they used to deliver papers to the houses or flats in the area, but obviously they needed somebody to do that, to deliver the papers. So it was, you know, if you went in and applied, and they'd only have maybe 2 or 3 paper boys. It was paper boys mainly. They didn't have paper girls. You'd go to the shop every morning, collect the bag of papers that people had ordered, and you take it to their houses and drop it through their letterbox. So it's like a delivery service for paper, for newspapers. So I had a job with our corner shop doing that. So every morning I would wake up around about 6:30 in the morning to be at the corner shop at 7 with my bag of papers, because it's a big bag. You got to walk around dropping it through, and all the number of the houses are written on top of the paper, so you know where you're dropping. It's written by the owner of the shop. He writes down who's got to get which paper. You take it to the house, drop it through the letterbox, and that's like that's kind of responsibility. Getting up at that time, and I think that taught me a lot about persevering, timekeeping, and I think those things helped me to become a footballer. It helps me in a different way to be responsible. So I think that helped me particularly to get to where I got to. But then, once I got past that stage and I started training with Arsenal from the age of 13, I knew about being on time. I knew about having responsibility in terms of, I thought, presentation was, I remember when I used to go to Arsenal, I had my kit was all clean and pressed and ironed out. So the way when I came and I was training, I remember a couple of the coaches used to say, "Wait, Paul, you've taken real care on your kit. It's clean. My socks were pulled up." It was all these little things that I just felt made an impression on not all the coaches particularly, but maybe one coach. So yeah, it was little things like that. I trained well, did my best in training, and tried to get on with people. And that was it. That bit about getting on with people. I mean, I got on with people to a point, but if somebody I felt probably being disrespectful or trying to take some liberties with me, I was able to look after myself. And I think that's where the South London bit comes in. I think you've got to have that skill really of getting on with people, but also those people that do try to challenge you, or not challenge you, or belittle you, or make you feel small, or whatever they want to try and make you feel, you're able to defend yourself. And I think that's a big one. I think that's probably what the South London bit gives you. And all those guys that we've spoken about, Michael Thomas and Dave Rocastle and many of the others, Kevin Campbell, I think they all had that. Tony Adams and Ray Parler, they've all got that little bit of something that they're able to get on with people, but they feel that people are messing with them and they'll give them a little bit of a leeway. They look after themselves, and I think in sport you need to have that. And people have got to be able to see that. So coming through the Arsenal setup, at 13, I got my chance to have a trial, and then from there they kept on sort of keeping me on until the age of 16, when they decided that. So at 16, they would decide whether they're going to take you on as an apprentice. So you get a 2-year apprenticeship where you just leave school and you just join up as a full-time apprenticeship. So basically you're learning the game, you're learning how to train properly, you're learning about the professional game of football. So I did that from 16 and then made my debut at 17.
Excellent. I just want to touch on, if we can look at an insight into what it was like from that transition from being an apprentice into a senior dressing room, and obviously making a debut in such a big game as the North London derby.
Yeah. So, that's a big kind of step as well. Yeah, making that step over from being an apprentice into being a professional. So I was apprentice at So 16, I left school at 16 as apprentice for only a year. And then I was signed as a professional at 17. So I was a professional footballer at 17. So, and I think once you get to that stage, you're professional. You got to where you're not quite there because you're not in the first team, because that's really the goal. Is really, for me, was the goal to get into the first team. So even though I'm a professional footballer, I'm not where I want to be. So I always remember thinking that I want to be in the first team. That's what I want to do. But that came pretty quickly for me. And so when I got into the first team at 17 and a bit, 17 and a half, I was the youngest player at that time, playing with much older players, having much older players around me. And I think, again, you just got to work out how to get on with people, because they're coming from different backgrounds, got different ideas on life. So you've got to work out how to get on with these grown men. And a lot of them were like 26, 27. People like Graham Ricks, Tony Woodcock. People have to look these names up. If anyone don't know these names, they'll have to look them up on Google. Yes, Paul Mariner. There's so many names that were playing for Arsenal back then, and they were big name players. And yeah, I think for me, I had to kind of work out how I was going to get along with these guys who I didn't really know, and also to try and be myself, coming from a different background. These are things that you find a way to do. So it was tough, but I think, I don't know, it's something that you kind of every day you work out how you're going to get on with people and how you're going to be yourself. I think, and that's an everyday challenge. Every day something new will come up. So I was quite slight as a player. So there's always these mental things, psychological things. So you're always thinking, I need to get bigger. I need to do more weights. I need to, I can't get knocked off the ball because these guys are big guys. They're mature adults. And then, that's the physical side, and then there's the psychological side. Stuff that they're talking about might not be of interest to you, or their interests are not really what you're interested in. So you've got to really work out how you're going to balance who you are with who they are, and make it happen. Because if you don't work that out, it's going to be even harder if you don't get on with your colleagues.
When you transitioned into the first team at 17, how long for yourself did it feel like before you were an established member of the dressing room?
Yeah, so it takes a while. It took me a while anyway to feel properly established. Yeah, so my first game was when I was 17, and then that season I probably played my first season. I came in halfway through, so I played, I think, about 6 or 7 games, and then the season was over. And the following season, which is 1980, I played around maybe 14, 16 games. And then the season after that, I played a bit more. So I think it would probably, I would say, probably into my second or third season into the first team squad, that I started to feel really part of it. I think when I first came in, the team wasn't doing particularly well. There was a lot of experienced players, and we weren't up in the league. We were sort of halfway, and the fans weren't particularly happy. So I came into a team that wasn't doing well, I think that made it tougher. And in fact, I had a tough time because my style of play wasn't sort of a style that the fans saw my value particularly. And I think maybe they felt they needed a team that was really about 100%. It's all about the physicality. It was all about making tackles. I suppose what I'm trying to say, you got more applause for a tackle, making a good tackle, or running 30 yards to make a good tackle than you did for making a 30-yard pass. And which really, the passing was my game more so than the tackling. So it did take a while for the fans to really appreciate my style of play, and so I had that to really overcome. And looking back on it, that's a big thing to really overturn. Is your fans, not that they weren't ever booing me, or but you could hear disappointment if the pass didn't come off. And I suppose that was because the team was going through a bad time. It was a difficult time for a young player to come in. But again, you have to find some, I think it's is more mental than physical. A lot of this is overcoming stuff psychologically. So that period for me was, even though I was in the first team, I still had to deal with how I was going to overcome the team struggling, and also myself coming into a struggling team. But physically, although I wasn't sort of physically strong, I could look after myself. For my weight, my actual body weight, I was quite strong, and I would use my weight. I wasn't fearful of getting into physical challenges. And back then, that's what fans wanted to see. They wanted to see you go into tackles. More so than now, I think fans want to see you on the ball now and playing and passing it around. So there was a difference. But in my mind, I felt that I had to make sure that I didn't shirk out of any physical challenge, or made sure I kept my physical fitness up to speed, and made sure I got into the gym and did my physical bits, because I felt that was a big part of the game, and although it wasn't natural to me.
Yeah. Interesting, touching on that. At the time, you had the likes of a Brian Robson, who would be very physical playing in midfield. How do you think the role of a centre midfielder has changed from the 80s to, say, a modern day centre midfielder?
Yeah, it has changed. So back when I was playing, basically most clubs and most teams were playing the 4-4-2 system by and large, and there wasn't many playing, three at the back or three midfield like we have today. So basically, it was 4-4-2, and the two central midfield players which is where I played mostly. Although I did start out on the left-hand side of midfield, so a bit wider, but central midfield was my position, and that's where I ended up playing most of my games. And back then, it would be one of the two midfielders would sit and hold, being more like a sort of holding player, and the other one would be the one that would be getting forward and trying to support the strikers and trying to get in to score goals. And usually that's how most teams had it. Like you mentioned there, Brian Robson was one of the better ones at actually doing both. He could sit, but his game was actually to get forward for Man United, and he was really, really good at it. And there's a skill to it. There's a skill to any position that you play on the pitch, but to be able to arrive in the box at the right time, to elude the defenders, and then to get a striking on goal, even attempting on goal, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of understanding of the game to do that. So generally it would be two two central midfield players. One would be holding, one would be looking to get into the box. Some teams, you know, they sort of, the two midfield players would alternate. So, you know, so once one got into the box, the opposition box, to try and cause some problems, at least the other one was out to make sure that, you know, they were sort of covering up and making sure that he wasn't in danger of being counter-attacked, as we use it. I don't ever think that word was being used when I played, counter-attack, but that's the word that's being used now. So yeah, it was pretty much everybody was playing that system, Carl, and there wasn't many sort of changing of the system. I suppose system changes kind of came in, as far as I can remember, when the Premier League started, I think, and Arsene Wenger sort of started to change things in the English game, and then we started to see the system change, and midfielders, you had sort of three players in midfield now, and you get situations where there's five in midfield, or, you know, all kinds of combinations that are going on now. But I think that really started to change just around Arsene Wenger's time, really.
Mm-hmm. Sean, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, so in retirement, like after your Arsenal career, you know, I understand that you went into coach education, and you know, what was the transition like becoming a coach educator and teaching the up and coming coaches of the future?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think for me with that was, I didn't intend to get into coach education. I wanted to go into coaching and managing.
Yeah.
Long story short, it didn't materialize. I did some coaching stuff at Arsenal, and then left. I was at Arsenal for about 7 years.
Okay.
After I retired, did some stuff with their academy, and then left Arsenal, which was a big sort of. So, you know, having been there as a player, done some coaching there, all in all, it would have been like, I think I was there as a player for 18 years, and as coach 7 years. So you took like, you know, 20 odd years, and then having to leave and go and do something else was a big change in my life, in our life. So it wasn't this wasn't a field that I kind of saw. In fact, it wasn't really a career at that stage, coach development, coach education.
Okay.
But I could see that there was potential for it to be.
Yeah.
And so when I left Arsenal, I looked into it a bit more with the PFA. They invited me in to do some coach educational stuff, and I did some stuff, and I thought, yeah, this is quite good. Then I sort of rescheduled where I wanted to take my next career, I suppose. So I thought, well, the coaching pathway isn't clear. There wasn't, you know, players finishing the game and going into coaching. It was ad hoc. There wasn't no sort of, didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, any system to it. I couldn't work out why some players were getting opportunities to coach and some weren't.
Yeah.
There wasn't this kind of qualification-based situation going on that we have now.
Yeah.
It was very confusing. So I couldn't, you know, basically I didn't really trust what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Players coming out, many players not getting jobs coaching wise, because there's not many jobs anyway, you know, if you think about it, particularly at the senior end, which most players, once they come out, they want to stay in the senior end of the game, because that's where they've been, and that's where I've been. So yeah, it was, you know, not understanding how it worked, not having a trust in how it worked.
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up in coach education, started to develop my skills in that. and then felt, this is where I'm gonna stay unless something else happens. This is where I'm gonna be. And so, yeah, I kind of fell into the coach education and been involved in this side of it for, wow, I'd say 20 years now.
Okay, wow.
I've seen some changes in the coach education field. It has changed a lot.
Yeah.
The courses now are more individualized, particularly. So I'm working sort of A licensed. I'm an A licensed developer and a pro license. So when you did yours, Sean, is what, 3 or 4 years ago now, or maybe even longer.
5 years ago now, yeah.
5, yeah. So that's when I first started out properly on the A license delivery. I mean, I've been doing it before, but I suppose that was sort of more concentrated on that. But since then, I'm doing pro license development. So I really enjoy it. So yeah, basically helping people get onto their pro license and doing a lot of work with senior players that are coming out of the game, going into coaching. No, it's really good. I really enjoy it.
It's good to hear you enjoying that part of your career, and it's been a real pleasure having you on and giving us your time. And hopefully it will serve well for everybody. So thanks again for your time.
My pleasure, and good luck with what you guys are doing. I think working with having my own kids, actually, just seeing how when they were 8, 9, 10, and being a parent, and I know you're doing, you want to do this for parents as well as for kids. It's really important. I always felt that as a parent myself, the best way to support your kids is literally by giving them support, not giving them pressure. And I saw that when I was a parent. I saw the pressures that the kids were being put under by the parents, and I suppose that'd be one thing that I remember actually watching my kids play, and the parents on the side were so putting the kids under so much pressure. And I just, because I knew that wasn't the way. I wouldn't be shouting, I wouldn't be bawling, I wouldn't be. It was like, and I remember parents coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Why are you not telling your son what to do? Why are you not doing this to us?" They just, unless you've been in that situation, the worst thing to do is to put that kind of pressure on the kids. And that's, so yeah, what you're doing is great stuff. And I think it's I think more and more parents, I don't know, I'm not in that area, but I think more and more parents, maybe you'd be able to tell me otherwise, are kind of getting it. But that is one of the big things that I saw.
Yeah. Well, it's
Definitely
been great to have your
improvement.
Yeah, it's been great to have your insight on that and offering the advice to parents as well, which is really important. And in these times that we're in, I hope that you stay safe, and we'll hopefully catch up with you soon. Hopefully one day I'll be on the pro license with you. All right. Well, have a good afternoon.
All right.
Yeah,
thank you.
Paul.
You too, guys. Yes,
Thank
Carl.
you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.